everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am going to be talking about writing full-time, or why I don't write full-time, and why I honestly have no plans to write full-time anytime in the near future. I know you might be thinking, why? Everyone wants to be a full-time writer. That is the dream. And it is true. That is definitely a dream. It's a dream in the sense of who doesn't want to blow up and become like a super famous writer and make millions of dollars off of books. And if that were to happen, surely I would quit my day job and write full-time. But I consider that a very unicorn scenario. And due to a number of factors that I am going to talk about, for me, it really would have to be a unicorn scenario before I would ever quit my job. I would have to have so much money coming in that I literally wouldn't know what to do with it. Because I want to talk about kind of appearances, transparency, individual circumstances, financial stability kind of factors that I certainly consider when it comes to the elusive idea of writing full-time and that you might want to consider as well. And in the interest of transparency, this conversation has been coming up a bit on AuthorTube, and I thought it would be fun for me to kind of do a whole video about my perspective as someone who's out there who is a professional writer, but who has had a day job the entire time and doesn't plan on quitting that day job. So you can see the other side. There are authors who are able to write full-time. We're going to talk about variables there. And there are writers who choose not to write full-time, who want to keep their day jobs in addition to writing. There's no one way to do this, to be a writer, to be a career author. And you're neither a success nor a failure if you are or aren't able to achieve being a full-time writer. I don't think what makes you successful as an author is how much money you make off of books, because you can be pretty successful. There are household names that you know, not like the mega famous ones, but there are definitely very popular authors who I bet you know, who you'd be shocked to find out are not full-time writers. They still have jobs, because you can be successful and not be rolling in dough, or you can be successful and just really not have the payment structure of traditional publishing or the volume of self-publishing necessarily work out for you. Like, you could be a successful self-publisher, but not necessarily make enough to support yourself because of variables like where you live and all sorts of other things. But as always, my expertise is traditional publishing because that is my area. I do generally wish that there was more transparency about this from a wide variety of authors. Even I have been surprised to find out certain authors who I really admire have day jobs, and that's because we just don't talk about this a lot. And also something we don't talk about is when you do see authors who write full-time, very often they don't mention that they have a partner or a spouse who is earning steady, lucrative income, and really that is what enables them to write full-time. That is like the invisible thing that so often enables someone to write full-time. We don't talk enough about any of these variables. Ultimately, you as an individual have to evaluate your own circumstances and kind of what your life situation is, what it's likely to be, and kind of what your writing career looks like, and income, and the expenses that you have in your life. So I'm just going to talk a bit about me. So I am single, so I don't have a romantic partner who is also earning an income, certainly not anyone I'm cohabitating with. So it's fully up to me to support myself, which means rent and utilities, food, clothing, like kind of all of those basics that you need, plus all of the extras that you might want. I fully support myself on all of this, and I have ever since I graduated from college and as an adult went out into the world to kind of support myself. In the past, I've had roommates, but I live gloriously alone and have done so for 9.5 years. And that was kind of not a sacrifice, but meaning I accepted that when I moved to Los Angeles 9.5 years ago, I wanted to live alone, which meant higher rent, full share of utilities falling on me. So I pay a little bit more for my living expenses than some people do, but that was something that I wanted to increase my quality of life. But I have to consider that it's me and only me who will take care of me. The other variable that is a factor for me, and I just like to share it because we all come from different backgrounds, and I know that my background might relate to some of your backgrounds, and you might go, I understand kind of her background and financial mindset, so this advice might be relevant to me. So I did not grow up with money. I would definitely say I come from a pretty classic lower middle class scarcity mindset, meaning I wasn't on the poverty line, but I have never really been middle class. There was always kind of the lower middle class where there was almost just quite enough, not always. When we didn't have enough, I was pretty young. I don't remember those times too vividly, but by the time I was a young adult, we had enough to be happy and comfortable, but with no extras. And so I am used to comfortable with no extras. And my mother really drilled it into me because she was super on top of this as well. You take a job, any job, the job that you need to support yourself, because that stability of knowing that you can make your rent and afford utilities and feed and clothe yourself, that is like the bare minimum. It is the most important thing. It's more important than having a dream job. Really, it's more important than having a dream job. You need to support yourself, because when you do that, you can do all the other fun, happy stuff. You can have that base and then build on top of it, saving for a vacation or splurging and buying yourself something nice. And that's the thing. So much of my mindset is I have my basics and everything else feels like a splurge. I still really deal with a lot of guilt about spending money on things. And this is the thing, because I have my day job and I don't plan on giving up my day job, and my day job fully supports me. The nice thing that I've discovered with my book deal, because I am paid to write books now, I receive money from publishers for my books, is for the first time in my life, I have savings. I have an emergency fund. They tell you you're supposed to. I never did. I've been saving it for retirement, which we're going to talk about, and I have been able to treat myself on the regular, which is the weirdest adjustment for me, honestly, that now when I go to a restaurant with friends, I can afford a $15 cocktail. It still hurts every time, but I can afford it. Strange. I can buy myself makeup at Sephora whenever I want. I shouldn't. I've been trying to spend less. Thank you, ColourPop. But I can, and in the past, I couldn't. I could not afford to buy super expensive makeup. I couldn't afford to go to the movies all the time. So that's honestly been the weirdest adjustment for me, that I actually have money now. But I have money because I kept my day job. I've done videos on book advances, and I'm going to link down below to these. I've in fact done a video on how to balance writing with a day job, which might be useful. But this one's just kind of about financial transparency. But I've also said before that the money I'm receiving for books after taxes is not enough to support me in the market in which I live, which is Los Angeles. So cost of living is actually a really huge variable for me. I choose to live here. Mind you, I choose to live here because my job is here, and my job couldn't exist anywhere else except New York, which is another very expensive place to live, because I do work in the television industry. So it's a choice, but it's a choice that I'm happy with. I like my job. And if I didn't have my job and I was trying to write full time, yeah, I could move somewhere else, but I've made a life here. So I really like Los Angeles, but I have to bear in mind when it comes to the variables of writing full-time, how darn expensive it is to live here. So, fun story time. So on January 1st, Los Angeles enacted a statewide rent control measure, and that is the only thing that saved me from a 35% rent increase that did happen in 2019. My monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California went from $1,600 to $2,150 a month. And there were no laws at the time that this did go up to prevent my building from raising my rent $500 or 35%. If I didn't have my full-time day job and my book deals, that rent increase would have broken me. I had to pay that increased rent for approximately 4 months. And then the statewide rent control measure, thank God, was passed and my rent went back down. They had to go back down to the starting amount and then only bump it, I think, 7 or 8%. So I still saw a rent increase, but not a $500 rent increase. But those are the realities of living in a place like this, especially as a renter. Unforeseen financial crazy things can happen at any time. I have cats, so it's important to have an emergency fund for when they get sick. And my book deal paid for when my poor cat Teddy got deathly ill last year, and I was so grateful to have that. I had never had savings before. So having that emergency fund, actual savings, which apparently normal people are supposed to have, is a real game changer for me. Though I would contend that in our modern reality, especially millennial generation and down, who has savings? Who has savings? Again, we're going to talk about retirement. So for me, meaning having my day job and keeping my day job is the key to long-term financial and emotional stability for me. I need the emotional security of knowing that no matter what happens, I will be able to afford the basics, and then book money can come when book money comes. I have experienced delays in my book payments, one of them because of me, because I needed a deadline extension. But also, you never know when you're going to sell a book. You don't know which books are going to earn out versus which books aren't going to earn out, so which ones have long-term income potential. And of course, briefly, with self-publishing, it's always a risk when you self-publish. You don't know if you're going to be a really successful self-publisher, so you want to be very circumspect. You want to work on your career, whichever side you fall on. Work on it until you have a pretty good long-term financial picture of what steady income is going to mean in your writing career. So let's talk about, have I ever considered quitting my day job? Yes. So this is actually to warn you and also make you feel better and give you some advice. So I think there's a natural cycle. When you first publish a book, whether it's self-published or it's your traditional debut, you are going to go through a magical honeymoon period. And I did. As practical as I am, I went through this little honeymoon period on my first book where I was dreaming almost every day of being a full-time writer. I was intoxicated by it. I was so thrilled and excited for my debut. The sky was the limit. I was gonna sell so many books forever and be so successful. And often this is driven by seeing other people who do write full-time. I know multiple people who write full-time, and it really runs the gamut. There are the people who write full-time who are also single people who have to solely support themselves. And usually they can do it if they get pretty lucrative book deals, but even so, they have to be experts at budgeting, and that scares me. Not that I can't budget, but that there are times when you don't get a payment for a long time. And then, of course, the other full-time writers I know all have spouses with full-time jobs who provide their health insurance. Health insurance. We're going to talk about health insurance. Health insurance is probably the number one for me. I mean, health insurance and having a roof over your head. So I had the dream, though, is what I'm saying. And then my book came out and everything came crashing down to earth. Writing my second book was so much harder. It took longer than I thought, which delayed my payment schedule. My fault. It was delayed because of me. And I went, oh, yeah, no. I can't handle all these crazy variables. So thankful for my day job. And I think that we all go through this. I think you are naturally going to go through a period when you first publish, whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing, where you are so swept up in the dream and it is like better than you can imagine and the sky is the limit and you're thinking of best case scenarios and you are going to become abjectly miserable in your day job. It was as short as 6 weeks, but it was as long as 3 to 4 months where I was really treading water at work. Not that I disliked my day job, but I was feeling more discontent than usual because of the allure of writing full time. And I'm so glad I got over it because then all sorts of other things happened. My mom got sick and passed away, and then my rent increased 35% last year and it's gone back down, and then I was really glad for my full-time job, and I work at a wonderful place. So that's the other thing. It's not just working full-time. Find a job you like, with people who you like, with a work-life balance that supports your writing career. That is actually really, really critical. It's not about having a full-time job, any full-time job, but a full-time job that you can be happy in that also facilitates your writing career. It's easier said than done, but it is doable, and I'm very, very happy and privileged to be in that position where I have both. I can have both. Okay, let's talk about health insurance and 401k. So health insurance is actually the big one. This is a warning more than anything for people, but also has been, other than paying my rent, the driving force in keeping my day job, and remains the driving force in keeping my day job. So I am American, and our health industry situation is a flaming garbage pile. You all know this, it's not great, it's not fair, and we don't yet have a tenable, long-term, affordable solution for all to have access to quality and affordable healthcare. So I like the private insurance that comes with my day job. I have always had it ever since I got my first job. I have always worked for a corporation that has pretty good private healthcare, and currently the corporation I work for has excellent private healthcare at a reasonable price. I'm covered for medical, dental, and vision. I am getting older. There are all sorts of potential health concerns. I mean, I do my regular dental checkups and my regular eyeglasses, and I go to the doctor for all sorts of things. Like last year, I had my weird chronic nosebleed problem and had to go to the doctor. I have a wonky shoulder. I'm really overdue to go, but I'm getting older. And, I just had the situation where my mom got cancer and it didn't go well. But she had amazing medical care, and it was all covered by insurance. In her case, it was actually covered by Medicare because she was retired and older, but it was terrifying staring down the barrel of a serious medical emergency. I have friends my age who have had cancer, and I am just constantly thinking, I need good health insurance. I also want to start a family. Even when you have good health insurance, you're going to end up spending thousands of dollars on having a child. It's so much. And then you need good health insurance for your kids. So the point is, health insurance is really, really critical, and I am a single person, so it's up to me to provide good health insurance for myself. Something that you might not be aware of if you're not American, or if you are American and you've always had private insurance. So if you don't have a day job that provides insurance to you, you have to get your own health insurance. Particularly, I live in California, where you pay a tax penalty if you don't have coverage. So most writers have to pay for their own health insurance. And the sucky thing is, health insurance is crazy expensive. And it's crazy expensive in that kind of public market for so little. I know people who pay through the nose for their health insurance themselves from their book money, and they're really not getting much in return. It blows. The deductibles are crazy. Our health insurance system is not great. It's very broken, and it's particularly bad and cruel to independent contractors, i.e., writers. And so a very critical thing for anyone to consider before they decide to write full-time or dream too strongly of writing full-time is, how is health insurance going to work? How much money do you have for health insurance? God, and I haven't even mentioned taxes. Taxes are also brutal, but you need to be making enough money from your writing to not only 100% cover your rent, your utilities, eating, clothing yourself, an emergency fund, your taxes, but to cover very expensive health insurance, and then to cover your deductibles should you actually need to use your health insurance. It is scary and it is expensive. Again, this is why many people can write full-time if they have a partner who has a lucrative full-time job, so they not only provide the financial stability, but they come with the good health care. So just be aware that this is a very important variable. So for me, since I support myself, I love my day job. I love my day job, I love my health insurance. But if you are in a partnership, you would have to have a very serious conversation with your partner. Are you prepared to be my primary financial support, and always make sure that you are gainfully employed with really good health insurance that covers both of us? This is a conversation that has to go into your partnership and your relationship. But as long as you are single, you're responsible for taking care of yourself. So 401k, I want to talk about 401k. Retirement doesn't have to be 401k. This is one that terrifies me because in my experience of some of the people I've talked to, but I also think this is just a millennial problem, not just a writer problem. Most people don't save for retirement, and I think that is a massive, massive mistake. I think we're staring down the barrel of a serious problem. We're just not going to really see it for 30, 40 years, but man, when millennials come of age, like as older people, there's going to be a bubble, and there's going to be millions of people who saved almost nothing for retirement. It's gonna be bad. Anyway, my mother drilled it into me to save for retirement the second I got a full-time job, and so that is what I have been doing. And when you write full-time, what I find happens, or I've seen happen, those who don't have the partner support especially, they skimp on the retirement and they don't save for retirement, and that is a huge mistake. Saving for retirement is incredibly important for me. So I have been saving since I got my first job, and individually by myself over 11 or 12 years of being in the workforce, I have saved approximately $100,000, which I think is pretty good for a millennial. This said, okay, if I had filmed this video a year ago, I just would have left it at that. I must keep my day job because I must keep contributing to my 401k. I'm now fully vested at my company because I've worked there more than 5 years. I've worked there almost 10 years. I just got more vacation. It's very exciting. But being fully vested means they are matching my 401k up to a certain percentage, and if I leave the company at any point, I keep all the money. But the longer I work at the company, the more they match, especially if my salary goes up. It's all a percentage thing. It's all weird financial stuff. But the point is, saving for retirement is incredibly important to me, and it should be incredibly important to you. It's a variable I think too few people consider when they're like, I'm gonna write full time. You have to long-term plan when it comes to this. But so a year ago, I would have said health insurance, 401k, so critically important. I can never quit my job. I still feel I can't quit my job because of health insurance, but in the interest of full transparency, I am in a very weird position now. So sadly, because my mother passed away relatively young, all things considered, she basically didn't get to use her retirement. She only started dipping into her retirement a year or two before she died, and I inherited her retirement account. So I am now in a very privileged but strange position where I am set for retirement as of now. Mind you, my financial planning is based on keeping my job and continuing to put money into my 401k, and I do take a percentage of my book money and I put it into a SEP IRA. I have been doing that since I got my first book payment, and I recommend you do the same thing. But I am now in a position where, because my mother basically never got to use her retirement, I inherited her retirement. And when you combine her retirement with my retirement savings, I'm on track to retire by 55, provided I keep my day job. So weirdly, 401k is no longer the number 2 concern for me, healthcare being the number 1. So the only variables I really have to consider now are, can I pay all of my expenses, and what is my health insurance, which does potentially mean a year ago I would have told you I'm never going to quit my job. Now I'm going to tell you I'm probably not going to stop working full time, but I could maybe in 10 years. Like, there's definitely a maybe should my career go really, really well. Let's cut me off right here. But the gist is that these are all of the reasons and factors and variables that go into why I have a full-time job, why I like my full-time job, and I really don't have any intention of quitting it. I'm in a really good position. I work at a good place. And honestly, my writing career is going really, really well. I think that there's some good long-term potential and benefits. So it doesn't mean in 2 to 3 years something might not shift or change. But right now, in terms of kind of 5-year planning, I am gonna stay where I am. I really like knowing that I can pay my base expenses, and then my book deal money goes into savings, emergency fund, some splurging. I'm saving up for a mortgage, which is something that I never thought would happen. But yeah, that's kind of just the situation I'm in, and why writing full time is honestly really not a priority for me. It's no longer a dream to which I am aspiring, and it doesn't have to be a dream toward which you push either if it's not gonna work for the variables in your life. That is the number 1 takeaway I want you to take away from here, and just my personal example and experience. I think it's really dangerous to look at other authors and especially assume that they all write full-time. Most authors don't write full-time. Or B, see authors who are writing full-time and not realize that they might have a variable. Their spouse might earn 6-figure income. They might be independently wealthy. Weirdly, that does happen sometimes. I've seen cases where a writer was in a very lucrative career before and accumulated 6 figures or more of savings, and that's why they were able to then write full-time. You never know what the variables are that enable someone to write full-time. Also, writing full-time isn't forever. Sometimes writers write full time and they do their joyful announcement, and very quietly 2 or 3 years later, usually when the publishing money dries up or there's an emergency situation, they go back to work. You just usually don't hear about that. It's actually the norm for writers, for professional writers, to juggle all these different things in their life, to juggle day jobs or multiple part-time jobs or side hustles or what have you, in conjunction with writing books and earning writing income. In not so short, I just really encourage you not to play keeping up with the Joneses in writing and publishing. I think that way lies a lot of jealousy and madness and, frankly, lack of transparency. So this is just my kind of situation. Now you know that I am just like so many other authors. I work full-time because I need it to support myself. I have to consider the variables of health insurance, 401k, rent, emergencies, and so on. And I don't have any plans to quit my job in the near future. Let me know down below in the comments, what's your situation? Do you hope to write full-time? Are you like, on it? What kind of day job do you have that enables you to write comfortably? I know this is a potentially heated topic, but let's be civil and just talk about it, because we're really terrible at talking realistically about money and writing and publishing, and so I think a little bit of transparency goes a long way. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I will make more discussion style videos about topics in writing and publishing, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, guys, happy writing!